Now that's a PAC. It's allegedly separate really from the Alliance's main business stuff. But they're all the same people. And they have they've given money to only Democrats and lots of money. Over the course of the last 2 election cycles, they've given thousands of dollars. Now, if they can give that kind of money to politicians to get them elected, to legislate against your rights, they don't need my tax money to help them run their business. Now, I called the Alliance last week, tried to leave a message. Their phone doesn't work. Gee whiz, they must have been expecting my call. I can only encourage you folks to, who's got a computer who gets his news online, who's got Facebook and all of that stuff. I can only encourage you to get on your computers and look for stuff in ammo land. Google up thegunmag.com, you'll find it. There's also a thing that Alan owns, it's a separate deal, it's called Liberty Park Press. I just wrote a column for my monthly 2A Defense column in Guns Magazine. Anybody know about Guns Magazine? Anybody in here subscribe? What the hell's wrong with you people? It's on the newsstand, you drugstore. That's how I pay my light bills. I wrote a story for Guns Magazine that is, I think it's scheduled for the July edition. And it's all about this money that the Alliance for Gun Responsibility has received from our state commerce department, which I think it's probably legal, but it's despicable, it's immoral that you would see the state feed public taxpayer money to a private organization that is devoted to denying us our constitutional rights. And that's something to really get mad about. Who all knows the legislative hotline? It's toll-free legislative hotline number. 1-800-562-6000. It's on that piece of paper that Jane just held up. You gotta burn up the phone lines from now until at the end of April, or until at least there is no action on these bills. Burn the phone lines up. Make yourselves known in that neighborhood down in Olympia. Be a pest. Because I'll tell you another little secret. Who is a taxpayer in here? I don't see a lot of hands. I mean, you guys are all living off of. Well, the secret of living in a republic, as a taxpayer, you outrank every one of those people in Olympia. They work for you. It ain't the other way around. When I was on the NRA Board of Directors about 25 years ago, every member of the NRA outranked me. I worked for them, not the other way around. I worked for them. And the people that you elect to go to Olympia to represent you, they work for you. You outrank them. They may not like to admit it, but that's the way it works in a republic, in our society. Who voted in the last election? Who didn't? Don't tell me, well, my vote doesn't count, so why should I? Or, well, I forgot, I was watching reruns of Andy Griffith. I used to work the gun shows for the Washington arms collectors down here in Once a month, every Sunday, I'd be down there on a weekend working the Second Amendment Foundation's table. And I heard every excuse known to man why somebody didn't vote. Guy walks up to me, and my son's standing right here. He's listening to all this, and he's astonished because he votes. Guy walks up to the table, and he's honest to God, he said, I don't vote, I don't want my name on the list. And I thought about that, and I said, hey, do you have a concealed pistol license? Yeah. You got a driver's license? Yeah. Your name's on a lot of lists. You pay your taxes? Yeah. Guess what? Your name's on the list. That's a worn-out excuse, too. You gotta vote. And here's another little secret. If you look at the way the numbers break down, the vote in Seattle, if all the gun owners and all the conservative voters everywhere else in Washington actually cast a ballot in the same election and they voted one way, you'd whip their ass. Seattle wouldn't know what fell on them because they have a lot of people who don't vote too. Because they're so self-assured, hey, we're going to win. I'm going to sit here and smoke some of Jay Inslee's dope. That's what happens. You look at the election numbers, and it's astonishing how you can see where some of these precincts in these districts where you would think everybody's going to vote because they're all good little Democrats, you know, they march to the same group. And a lot of them sit the election out. You gotta vote. I'm a firm believer in voting. I'll take time off of work. At least I used to when we used to vote at the polls, and you had to show ID to vote. And even though everybody knew who I was, which probably meant that they didn't want me to vote, but anyway, I'd have to go in, you know, tell them who I was, sign the little thing. Now you don't do that. Mail-in balloting. I imagine you've probably heard all the stuff said that mail-in balloting is the easiest way to pull election fraud. Who has heard that? I've heard that. I'm not necessarily sure that that's true, but I'm not going to say that it's not true. Ask Dino Rossi. Dino's a friend of mine. Just ask him. Stay in touch with your friends, your fellow shooters, the people you hunt with. Talk to the people you work with. Especially around this time of the year, you got to pay our taxes. You know, they got to pay taxes. They should do that right before elections. But here's something else. People was talking about 1136. Down at the bottom of 1136, you'll find out that that bill, if it's passed, takes effect November 1st, 2026. Guess what happens 5 days later? You get to go to the polls and vote. You get to cast your ballots. If that bill takes effect November of 2026, just a few days before you get to hit them back. And remember to vote. You gotta vote. You gotta stay in touch with your friends. You gotta stay on top of what's going on in Olympia. I know I don't have to worry about anybody in this room. You guys look like a bunch of eager beavers. But there's also some. I don't see any young faces really in here. The ladies notwithstanding. But where are the 20 years old? The 20-year-olds? Where's the 25-year-olds? Why aren't they here? Even if they're paying rent, they're paying taxes. They're paying somebody else's property taxes. Talk to these younger people. You got children, you got grandchildren maybe. Talk to them about it. Tell them the real facts of life. Because money talks and BS walks. And yes, sir.
I got a question. How many people?
Well, at the end, I'll answer your question. Now, put that rubber hose away. I won't confess. I guess I can wrap this up by noting this. In the last few years, since the McDonald ruling in 2010, everybody heard of McDonald v. City of Chicago? Well, that was a case that was filed by the Second Amendment Foundation. We won that case before the Supreme Court. The neat thing about McDonald is that it incorporated the Second Amendment to the states via the 14th Amendment. So it's not enough for these guys to think they can dance around the state constitutional provisions. Now they got to pass the Second Amendment smell test. And that's why I brought up, at the beginning of this thing, deprivation of rights under color of the law. We're going to reach a point where those guys can't dance around that one. That's going to start showing up, I think, in some of these lawsuits all around the country. I got a feeling it's going to show up with more challenges of Measure 114 down in Oregon, which, as being said, it's yesterday I had to write the story. I was stunned. I read the ruling, 25 pages long, and it is the most tortured piece of BS logic. It ignores the principles laid down in the Bruin decision that they can't use government interest over historical use of the Second Amendment and right to keep and bear arms. They did it all through that ruling. And so I was talking to a guy who is in Oregon, a top activist down there. He said, well, yeah, I know, Dave, the judge who wrote the ruling is a moron. I didn't quote him, but after I read the ruling, I'm kind of wondering. When you look through court rulings, and I read a lot of them because I have to write about them, and you pick up this stuff where these people are deliberately ignoring what the Supreme Court said. They're deliberately ignoring even what some laws say. And they write these rulings to dance around and exercise their judicial activism to do what they think maybe the legislatures and the Congress should have done but didn't. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court of the United States does not have a police force to send out and start saying, oh, Your Honor, that's a no-no. You just violated the law. You're off the bench. They can't do that. But you can do that. Presidents, whoever is in the Oval Office, they're the ones who appoint the federal judges. Elections count. That's why you got to vote. Okay, anybody? That's kind of the end of my lesson. You've got to vote. You got to stay involved. Because the people in Olympia, the people in D.C., who are supposed to represent us in Congress, they're counting on the fact that a lot of you don't vote. I assure you, your name's on a list, so get that out of your mind. Go and vote. It's important. Because they're one day every year or one day every 2 years, you get to do something legally that people around the world get thrown in jail for. You get to overthrow the United States government if you want to, and it's in the Constitution. You get to do that. Don't forget, that's the power you have. Well, listen, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I got to go and sit down here and shut up.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate you coming from North End to come and meet with us. So we just want to mention a couple things. He said the importance of voting. I will tell you, if a gun owner does not vote, that is actually a vote in favor of these anti-gun bills. So just so you're aware of that. And we need gun owners voting, even in school board races, because the other side farm teams their candidates through school board races. My senator was farm team. They took a person, they gave her a job in the Urban League of Pierce County. They gave her a makeover. They taught her how to speak. She won't do town halls because she can't answer questions. But then they ran her for school board. She got elected, and then they spent $3 million to defeat a constitutional lawyer that was our senator, and that's where she's been ever since. But as Dave spoke also, if the gun owners would vote, and yes, jury duty is from your driver's license, not your voter's registration. If all the gun owners would vote and the people of faith, there's about 900,000 people of faith in Washington State that do not vote. If those two groups would vote, we could change this whole state, and then we wouldn't be oppressed like we are today. So I want to mention a couple of things. The importance is going to be that every gun owner has to, and people who believe in the Constitution are going to have to respond on these bills. It's going to take more than 8,000 people. If we have 700,000 people that have concealed pistol license, could you imagine if 700,000 people would say opposed? The Democrats would not pass these bills. So I've made it easy for you. I've made a sheet, and it tells you every way. If you call the 800 number, a nice lady answers the phone, and she'll ask you for your name and address. And all you have to say is tell my representatives to oppose these bills. The bill, as Levine talked about, the House bill now moves to the Senate. So that one you have to talk to your senator. And the Senate bill will go to the House. But if you don't remember, just say send it to all three. And all you have to say is please oppose this bill. So I've given you other ways. So you're going to have to respond 2 times on these bills. Once in the hearing and once in just to your individual reps. So yes, you do have to respond. If any of you can take any of these leftover forms that I have over here and distribute them to your gun club, make copies, drop them off at a gun store, tell the gun store owner to the importance of getting these out to the gun owners. And if any of you would like to make a donation, help me pay. I pay for all this stuff out of my pocket. The ink's gone from $40 up to $300. So I pay for this all myself. And so if you want to donate to help me pay for all this stuff, I really would appreciate it. I have a couple of things back there. But I've given you every way to testify on these bills. And so and if any of you are on Facebook, I'll be happy to email you this. I actually will post it on the women's Facebook page so that you can make a copy from there, but I will email it to anybody too. If you can, the other forms is to let people know, I do list the bills, so if you do want to take a stack of these, just circle or highlight the 2 bills that are moving forward, because I also tell how to comment on the bills too. And Renee, can you hold up an orange card back there? If you're not getting the NRA alerts, some of you signed up and I'm getting those processed, but the NRA sends out a nice take action alert, and all you have to do is click take action. A letter populates to your elected officials or the committee members, and all you have to do is hit send. So they do it easy for you. The other thing, I have a form as well that shows you exactly how to comment on a bill. And if you look at this sheet here, I put down exactly how to comment on a bill, and you'll indicate opposed, and you'll indicate who you want it sent to. If you want it sent to your senator or House members, if in doubt, send it to all of them. And also on there, you can sign up to get email alerts on the bill, and that's right in one of the menu items right here. So please sign up there. Now, I took the time, because a lot of you are new to the legislative process, and I wrote this 4-page guide on how to speak to your legislators. And the one thing I will say to you, if you're going to start off on a letter or something, if you can personalize it a little bit, that's good. When I was testifying in one of the hearings, I think it was transportation, one of the senators had her back turned to the speakers, and she was doing Candy Crush on her phone the whole time. I took a picture of her and posted it. But what I talk about on here is, when I speak, I sound like a feminist because I talk about women's rights, and yes, some of you heard my testimony. I survived a home invasion by 2 men. So I talk about that because the other side gets up there and says, if these mean gun owners come in my daughter's daycare and they start shooting up the place, you need to pass this bill to save our, our lives. So, but, vehicles kill more people than guns do. And, do a little research. There's another lady that has the same first name as me that's on the other side. And she gets up and says, I am here because my niece died of gun violence. Well, if you do a little research, the guy down in California was diagnosed with mental illness 7 years before the incident. 2 years before the incident, he wrote a manifesto. He had a YouTube page where he vented his frustrations all the time. The police went out and visited him and did nothing. And the day that he went on a killing spree down there, he hated women because his dad's a screenwriter. He had all the money in the world. He had a BMW, nice clothes and all that. But on the day of when he decided to kill all these women, he said he sent out that manifesto to over 30 people, and they did nothing. Gun violence didn't kill her niece. Her niece was killed by a mentally ill, deranged criminal. And I will tell you that guy went out in the morning and stabbed his roommates to death, stabbed their friends, so there was an assault knife killing people. And then he went to kill his stepmom and step-sibling, also wanted to do it with a knife. And the dad was home, so he got mad and left because he didn't want to do it in front of his dad. So he took his BMW killing machine and went and ran over people, killed people with his car. Then he owned a SIG and a Glock, and he lied on his forms when he bought those 2 firearms. He lied. It wasn't the gun that killed her niece. It was a deranged, mentally ill guy that was ignored by everybody for over 7 years. And you can still find out information about that guy. But see, this is what we're dealing with, is the emotions on the other side. So please get to know your legislator, talk in their language. Why I started saying it's a woman's right is because I was looking at Lori Jenkins and how that was an important issue to her. So I thought, okay, I'm going to make gun rights a women's right too. So I know men have rights as well. So I have this page, though, that I made, and I also, if you didn't get one the last time, I have these booklets that's about the legislature and how it functions. So use it as a reference guide if you don't know what SB means or HB or how the process is. It's just a good reference guide. And for those people on Facebook, I can email the PDF of that. So please take advantage of those, but I want you each to take a few before you leave here today and distribute them to your gun club and maybe some gun stores near you and ask them to distribute them. I am finding them around places. I did find them in a gun shop, so whoever dropped them off there, I appreciate that. Well, now I want to introduce you to Pete Serrano. Pete is the founder of the Silent Majority Foundation, and they also do legal actions for your civil rights and constitutional rights, and we appreciate that he ran for Attorney General. Unfortunately, he was the silver medalist, but if all the gun owners would vote, we could elect him the next time. So I just appreciate Pete, and so he's going to talk about what he's doing now, and what if we have to go into a legal action. So thank you, Pete, for coming over from Pasco.
Thank you. Isn't Jane awesome? Like a true woman, she told me I have my rights. She must be checking with my wife. I'm kidding. A little bit. I mean, thank you for the NRA's work. I mean, you are tireless up there. I get the emails from you. I get the emails from the ILA. And you make my life easy so that I can spend time prepping for court, touch a button and get an email out to each one of my senators or my senator and my 2 representatives. So appreciate the work you're doing, Dave, with Second Amendment, and with your continued writing and advocacy to educate folks. Thank you for everything you're doing. I'd like to say that, the NRA has been a phenomenal partner for us at the Silent Majority Foundation. For those of you who don't know, we really started in the middle of the COVID pandemic. As a city council member, I saw ineptitude and inaction, trying to really make sure that my city of Pasco, that our business owners, that our residents were protected from government overreach. And I couldn't even get a floor vote to say, hey, we're not going to allow the government to dictate how we run the city. And that really spurred me into some action, contemplating and working on behalf of folks that wanted to recall Jay Inslee for some of those actions during COVID, and then founding the Silent Majority Foundation. Here we are 4 years later with about 45 lawsuits on your behalf. Everything from Parental Bill of Rights. If you signed the initiative last year, we helped defend Initiative 2081, which was the Parents' Bill of Rights. Fortunately, we were successful in the King County Superior Court with the state, and now, of course, the left is appealing that one. And as you know, there's, I think the House bill passed out of chambers. The Senate bill died, if I understand. So the Parents' Bill of Rights is still kind of an open issue. And to the point that we're talking about your necessity to get involved in Olympia, obviously we're here because of our common interest in firearms and protecting our families and our loved ones, and quite frankly, just our constitutional right to enjoy something. In this case, being a protected firearm. But there's so much happening in that beast of Olympia that we all have to be paying attention, that the Janes of the world, that the Avines of the world who are out there sending us the emails, just click, just sign in, just testify. To Jane's point, 8,000 isn't enough. 80,000 would be great. 150, 200,000, or all 700,000 would be perfect. I'm not going to talk about last year and the what-ifs, who should have voted, who didn't. They would have changed the course and trajectory of the state with me as Attorney General. It would have changed, but it didn't. So here we are today, in 2025, let's talk about the chips that we have. So right now, Silent Majority Foundation has a handful of firearms cases, and unfortunately, it looks like probably by the end of the year we'll have a bunch more. That's the crux. You can go home now. So what are the cases? Our leading case is called the Gators Guns case. It's state of Washington versus Gators Custom Guns. And again, NRA has financially supported us. They provided what's called an amicus brief, which is a friendly briefing a particular issue. When we ended up in the state Supreme Court, Second Amendment Foundation, I know GOA, Gun Owners America, Firearms Policy Coalition, handful of other people jumped in and supported the case that we started in Kelso and in Cowlitz County Superior Court, because the state of Washington told a small FFL that he could not sell his magazines, and they said, hey, look, we're going to have you sign this document, and you've got to sign it under the penalty of perjury. If you lie to us about what you've been doing, what business you've been conducting, associated with 10-round magazines that have been bound, larger than 10-round magazines, we'll make sure that under the penalty of perjury, we will either jail you or fine you, or we'll do both. We'll see what Bob Ferguson back then, our Attorney General, wants to do. So a small business owner has to really determine, what does he want to do? How does he want to respond to the Attorney General's inquiries, again, that have to be signed under penalty of perjury? And again, that comes with serious criminal accusations at that point. Let's call it what it was. They were accusing him that if he was going to lie, he was going to go to jail. And so we stood with Wally Wentz, the proprietor of Gators Custom Guns. Now, the cool thing about this case, a lot of folks ask, well, if you sue in state court, you end up in Olympia, which is generally true. Because the state brought the action, it would have been our choice to remove it from Kelso to Thurston County. Well, I have zero interest in Thurston County, ever. but I certainly have even less interest when my choice is to be in court in Cowlitz or Thurston. And so we took the case there. We had a hearing on it, and this was about a year and a half ago, and the judge issued a 55-page opinion that under the Second Amendment and under Washington's Constitution, Article 1, Section 24, which says your rights to bear arms shall not be impaired instead of infringed, which to me is an even higher threshold. Our Constitution is amazing. It protects individual rights, it protects civil rights so intimately, and you should become familiar with that Constitution. You should become familiar with the rights that are protected under that. Anyway, 55 pages later, boom, Gators wins. Not surprisingly, immediately it gets appealed to the Supreme Court. We had our hearing on that before the state Supreme Court on January 14th. So we're now 2 months, give or take 2 months past that date. I've been watching every week the Supreme Court issues usually one, sometimes two opinions. If I calculate it right, we're about the 9th on the list. Based on the most recent opinion that came out today, it was heard late November of last year. We were the very first, and usually there are 2 or 3 cases heard every day. We were the first and only case heard on the first day of session, which I think, to a degree, I think the Supreme Court understood not just the timing was there, but how important it was to have this case. And God willing, we'll do the right thing, but I can't opine on that. I tell people, my joke is, I may wear a black suit to court, may wear a different color suit, but I never wear a black robe. And so my job is to convince that one or those 9 or those 3 black robes that I'm correct. And I have to leave it in their hands as soon as I've done my job. I feel very confident that we have a really, really robust, well thought out, and not just thanks to us, thanks to these other groups that supported through these amicus briefs. I think our record's replete with reasons, aside from the fact that there's pretty express language in both constitutions that if they were adhered to, it'd be a slam dunk. That said, we made sure to build the records so that we could have additional information, so that if we do have to appeal it back east to the U.S. Supreme Court, we'll go there. And we're ready to do that. We're ready to do that. God willing, we don't have to. So hopefully in the next 60, 90 plus days, we'll have a decision out of the state Supreme Court, and hopefully we see something that they actually paid attention to what they read or listened to. And so I think that case is, that's the preeminent one. I'd say probably for the firearms cases that are sitting here in Washington, just because it has such a domino effect potentially, right? You're taking a case where the Supreme Court, to overturn it, is going to have to say, no, the judge got this wrong on the Constitution. Then they're going to have to explain why he is wrong on the Constitution, which, anyone that's read it knows he's right. But the point is, this case tees up so much, prospectively in how Second Amendment cases can be litigated in Washington. I think there's, at least from my perspective, we are just riding a lot on this, if you will. And again, I think it's teed up in a way that it's going to be tough for them to overturn. Could they? Sure. I mean, that's their prerogative. And again, we're ready to appeal it to the U.S. Supreme Court if that's where we have to go. So we're looking at that one. And for our cases, there are about 4 other cases. There's another federal case on the so-called large capacity magazines, greater than 10 rounds, that we've left in Yakima. It's just kind of sitting, in part because there's a 9th Circuit case that came up from San Diego, and that one's languishing there. Dave and I were talking. There's certain folks, that just don't want to sign off on being right, but offending other people, right? And so those ones are kind of languishing. We let that sit. We also let it sit because of the Gators has implication on the state and federal issues. And then we have our Guardian Arms case, which is that's House Bill 1240 from 2024. And that was the so-called assault weapons ban. And that one's presently in Thurston County. We started it over in Grant County, and we brought motions to bring it back to Grant County. And the judge actually said, right now is not the time to look at that because we've actually put it on a hold, waiting to see what the Supreme Court says in the Gators case, We know that that analysis will largely drive, the analysis for the so-called assault weapons ban. And so again, when I say there's a domino effect of a single case, it has such a ripple effect on all these firearms cases that we're all waiting on, that we're all looking at in the state of Washington. Obviously, it won't reach out beyond us, aside from if we have to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. But there's a whole lot to it. There's going to be a whole lot of interesting questions. The state consistently argued that under, I think, a 2008 case called Jorgensen, any reasonable regulation is appropriate for the state to adopt. And that could be a ban, and that could be anything the state finds reasonable is a reasonable regulation. It's a very circular argument. My kid over here on a tablet who's not even listening could probably argue just as well on that point. But here we are. That's what we're up against. And we could get into the intricacies of that case, but I don't want to bore you. And so here's the reality. These cases are long drawn out. We filed with Gators, like I said, it was almost a year and a half ago, with the so-called assault weapons ban. I think we're sitting on 2 years about Rob. This is Rob Waits, one of our other directors of the Silent Majority Foundation. He's taking the night away from his wife and 6 kids, so I don't know if that's a sanity check for him, but I'm giving him a round of applause, for his dedication to your rights. There's just, I don't want to project out what at the end of this year we're going to have. We still have so many catch-up bills, House Bill 1143 from last year that had to do, with some of the other paperwork issues that reclassified crimes and now is prohibiting folks from who had a misdemeanor 20 or 30 years ago that's now classified as a felony even though they took care of it back then. These people are being denied new firearms, which means they've been able to get firearms for 2 decades. These stories they come to us. We've had probably at least a dozen, maybe more. These are good people that live in your community that, they did something stupid in their 20s or 30s, and, it was because it was a misdemeanor, but now the legislature's reclassified it as a felony. They're prohibited from new firearms. They may be owners of dozens of guns, and obviously had them for some time without having done anything. That's one of the bills that we're constantly looking at is like, okay, how do we get the bandwidth to attack that one? And then, of course, as you've heard from both Jane and Nadine and Dave, we have the potential of bills that are absolutely going to need some attention if we don't do our job in this room. And our job collectively is to make sure that these bills don't pass. And so everyone that's talked about get active and vote, get active in Olympia, even if it's get active from your computer in Olympia and get 10 friends to sign in, to say no, to say no, to say no. And when it comes to good legislation that's proposed, probably going to be from the Republican side, but, on the offshoot that it comes from the other side, support people. Support your legislators. Let your voice be heard in a positive manner. Let them know they're doing a good job, at least on that bill. These are the types of things that we have to do to continually make sure that Olympia functions on behalf of the people, because it's long lost its way. It's walked far, far away from you and I and our rights, and we can't just let it go. I will tell you this, it is much easier to have you all show up and go fight in Olympia than to finance a $250,000 or $500,000 case. And I promise you, we're not financing cases at that level. So the 5 attorneys that we've hired are taking a tremendous pay cut. And I will be honest, at some point, there will be a financial burden on them and their families that they won't be able to bear this and will have to get other jobs. And that's a day that I'm afraid of. If we cannot stay the course financially with Silent Majority Foundation, we will not be able to do the work for you. And I assure you of this, our state won't give a crap. They're not going to give the $100,000 and whatever to Silent Majority Foundation. Honestly, we wouldn't take it. We refuse to apply for any grants. We will not partner with the government. Because our job is to sue the government to keep your rights. I tell people it's the stupidest job. It should not exist. It's ridiculous that it exists, but it is the most important frontline job. Because we are the place between them screwing you out of your rights and you figuring out how to take care of that yourself. And I don't want to get there. I want to make sure there's a buffer zone. And we're using the court system, and we're trying to work with everyone else to make sure the legislative process works, but when it's broken, you've got to go into the courts. And so we need your support. You've got to be active in Olympia. You've got to vote. And you've got to fund someone. If it's Silent Majority Foundation, we'll appreciate it. We'll scrap it together to make a miracle out of it. If it's NRA that you want to fund, if it's Second Amendment Foundation, they're doing the work too. You've got to be willing to do something. Coming here in a friendly room is not your solution. It's a great step. It's like showing up at AA and saying, "Hi, I'm an alcoholic." Okay, you got 12 more steps. At least so I've been told. You got to take all the steps. I appreciate that you've taken time away from your families and your busy lives, but we have to do more, individually and collectively. Like Dave said, you go to a gun range, part of a club, part of a team, part of something, you have to be the one evangelizing it. You have to be out there talking about whether, again, it's the NRA, Second Amendment, whether it's us, whether it's some other right that you're looking to protect. You have to be out there knocking on your friends' doors and saying, "Have you heard of this group? If not, here's a 5-minute video, or here's a Facebook post or a Twitter post, whatever you like. Here's their website. I donate," and you can either tell them how much or whatever. I donate monthly to make sure their lights are on. I do this to make sure they know I support them. We absolutely need the support. The government's going to do whatever the hell it wants with your money. That's been made very clear by Dave. They'll give it to their pet projects, and I promise you, we're not their pet projects. None of us in this room is. So, I'm extremely grateful. I guess I could say that you've entrusted me, but I've just taken it upon myself and my team to fight for you. But I do appreciate those who continually support us. We absolutely feel it. We absolutely need it. We will keep fighting because that's what we do. Again, whether it's the Parents' Bill of Rights, whether it's firearms, whether it's people who are wrongfully terminated, whether it's a preacher who, God forbid, believes in traditional marriage and says it in Spokane and the city wants to condemn him, whether it's any of those issues or anything tangentially related, we get the craziest calls. I'm like, "Not in America." Then I Google it and it's like, "Yeah, in freaking Washington." Wow. I guess we're not in America. But all joking aside, we are here to fight to make sure that this state turns around, even if it's that slow turn of the Titanic. We may glance off a couple of glaciers, but we won't sink. We're not going to let it happen on our watch. So I appreciate your time. Thank you. God bless. Jane, thank you so much.
Thank you. Hey, one thing though you didn't mention is how do people donate to you?
Yeah, that's probably great. So there are some flyers over on the edge of the table, but also silentmajorityfoundation.org. The shorthand is smfjb.org is our website. Again, we got flyers on the table. If you're a QR code person, flash on that. If not, grab a sticker, grab a handout. There's also a hard address, which I can give you, but it's easier to just read it off the paper. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit, so your money is, again, trying to keep it all as tightly wound as possible. So thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to take time for some questions. I just wanted to mention a couple of upcoming things. As long as I have your contact information, I'll be doing a statewide Zoom type of or Microsoft Teams training session for people that want to volunteer and get involved with defending your Second Amendment rights, because I need help across the state. I can't do it all myself, but I do travel around and do those things. The next thing is, if you want to save the date for May 17th, we will be conducting an all-day workshop with the NRA Law Enforcement Division. It's going to be a training session for safety preparedness in the churches, house of worship. But it's for anybody who volunteers at a church, attends a church, wants to help their pastor team. So I'll be looking for people to help me invite their pastors, the leadership in the church. The Law Enforcement Division is not going to charge me anything to come and teach this. The instructors are all retired law enforcement, and they'll give you a certificate at the end too. So there's going to be a small charge for a lunch, because it's going to be like a 9 to 4 or 5 o'clock, and very thorough safety training. And as we're seeing the other side escalate in their hostility towards our side, it's the timing is good for this. So we're inviting. We'll want you to invite your pastors and your church as well. So that'll be coming up. If you haven't filled out an orange card before, they're on the table there to get your NRA alerts. And if you would like to testify in any of the hearings, because we're always looking for people, then I have a sign-up sheet over on the red tablecloth table over there, and you can sign up there. And I do these workshops for those of you who are first-timers. I do these quite a few times a year. This club gives me the room, so I appreciate the Tacoma Sportsman Club for supporting what we're doing. But we will be doing another one on the full legal information about what's happening. And we'll be having a safety one with the sheriff, and we'll be doing some different things. And if you want a speaker, let me know. I'll be happy to organize it. But next time, I want y'all to bring a friend. So you're all going to grab some flyers, take them to your gun shops and all that. So with that, I'm going to open up the floor for questions. So Renee, do you want to hand out the mic here? And then if you can just ask a question and not tell a story, and then let me know who you want to answer that.
This is for Pete. What was the outcome of the Gators Guns case? Was it that the magazine ban was unconstitutional or something else?
So, in the Superior Court, which is our lowest level of the trial court, it was that under both the state and federal constitution, that the magazine ban in itself is unconstitutional.
And you're before the Supreme Court now?
Currently, we argued it on the 14th of January, and give or take 60, 90-ish days, we'll have a decision out of the Supreme Court.
What do you think's going to happen?
I mean, there's the hopeful me, there's the realistic me, and then there's some other guy. Look, the bottom line is, it's very clear from the trial court that it's unconstitutional. So they're going to have to either argue against that, which they certainly could do. I'm hopeful that at least a split decision could come out of it, and they may rule that it's, they're going to hammer on our state constitution, but don't want to touch the Second Amendment. I struggle with the question, because it could be we get our butts kicked, but then we could also have an I know, in our favor. I don't think that's likely, but that's why we prepared it in case we have to go back to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Thanks. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Tom. He's a lawyer, too. Retired. Okay. Next question.
So
Who's it
my
for?
question was for you. I'm sorry, I'm a terrible person. I
Aveen?
forgot your name. What was it?
Aveen Klein.
A-D?
A-V-E-E-N. Is how you pronounce it.
That's my Starbucks name.
You kind of touched on the question that I had when it says government property or state property where children might be present, and being a hunter, and that could be lakes, land that is that you're hunting. And my understanding is when you have a concealed weapons permit, it has to be concealed. You can't open carry with a concealed weapons permit. So you kind of touched on it, but is that seriously like a real thing? Like you might not be able to have a rifle on state land or a shotgun on a lake?
Yes. That is the very essence of Senate Bill 1598. Again, we saw this parks provision in a bill last year and the year before. It's actually been many years where legislators, typically come from the Democrat side, said, well, we're just going to ban open carry at the Capitol. And we're just going to ban it at transit centers. And we're just going to go here. And then every year we come back with more. Parks were removed last session. It's back in this session. The question was, we removed it last year. Why is it back? Because they're going to keep coming place by place until you cannot lawfully carry. So under Senate Bill 1598, there is no open carry of firearms. Again, concealed is exempt. I'm an avid duck hunter. I don't shoot ducks with my 9mm SIG that I carry for personal protection. So, shotguns, yes. On parks, places where children are present, that goes beyond parkland to now anywhere children are likely to be present. I would argue is just about anywhere in the state of Washington. So if you are a hunter, talk to your hunter friends. Get them involved, raise this issue, even if it's, again, just crossing a parkland. Because what we see in the arguments that we continue to hear in Olympia is this increasingly urban concentration of people. They think of parks as just the playground structure next to a school. Not what parks truly mean. A park in Seattle, downtown Seattle, is very different than what a park is on the eastern side of the state. But it would ban the open carry of firearms on parks.
And even archery hunting, you usually have a sidearm.
Yes. Even if that's carried below your binos, that would be open carry.
Am I allowed to ask a second question? So the magazine ban, if you have, you can't buy them, right? But if you already have it, are you allowed to have it in your gun when you carry it? If you have a 15-round mag, can you carry it in your gun?
Yeah. So there's no issue with grandfathering. So in other words, magazines have been grandfathered. You can't procure, you can't manufacture, you can't bring in from outside of the state. So you can't get pulled over. They say you got a 15-round magazine. And I think Oregon, actually, my recollection was they tried to not grandfather, so any in your possession would be gone. It's simply that you won't be able to get more. And of course, the state believes these things are like infallible and eternal. That you'll never break one, it'll never jam. There'll be no risk of ever having to procure a new one. I mean, that's fundamentally what they argue. But we all know that there's plastic and metal and springs and pieces and, stuff happens. So you're okay to carry them. You just won't be able to get more. And I don't mean that as just.
I've heard like so much different
No, it's,
opinion on
yeah, no, you're, again, if you got them, you got them.
For now.
Yeah, for now. I mean, who knows? At any point, like, there's what they start with the parks, and I think certainly if our case doesn't go well, I can imagine that the 2027 legislative session would then see somehow modifying this to ban any grandfathered stuff. So that's why winning now, and while trying to dispose of the body while the head's cut off, like that's what we're gonna do. Thank you.
I just wanted to add a little bit of Oregon. So this ballot measure, the case just came down and ruled entirely constitutional. Again, I anticipate will be challenged. The NRA's case is sitting in the Ninth Circuit waiting for the Ninth Circuit to decide the California 10-round magazine ban case. So there's a lot of questions. There's like a bottleneck in the court. But as a fair warning, right? Defeat this in the legislature, as Pete has said, it is a lot cheaper to defeat something in the legislature than it is for litigation. If it comes to litigation, we will be there to litigate. We've done that. Second Amendment Foundation, Silent Majority Foundation, we're there. If we defeat it in the legislature, it becomes a whole lot more simple. But for a fair warning, again, we have ballot measure 114. That was passed by 50.68% of the vote. You need just over 50 to pass, less than 1%. We just got that case ruled, right, in the appeals court. The Oregon legislature, much like the Washington legislature, starts with one, then comes the next. They already have a bill up to amend ballot measure 114 based on legal arguments. That bill's being heard on Monday. So the ballot measure hasn't even taken effect, and they're already amending it. We can anticipate the same outcome if this happens in Washington. Right? It creeps up. So just stay engaged, everything you can for these two bills up until April 27th. Signing off.
I just want to mention there are a few gun clubs that the land is owned by the government. And so being that that bill is so vague, there's a big gun club in King County that all their land is owned by King County. And they could decide to shut that gun club down, and that will again limit where you can get training. And if you can't get training, then you can't get the permit to purchase or for a concealed pistol license. So it's all a little bit vague, but that's something that could happen as well.
Is it also something to consider? This is a question for Aveen or, is it also something to consider the telephone poles as being, owned by, or to go with that bill with the government-owned buildings or whatever? But my question was, how backed up are we in court for all these bills that have been passing over the years? Because I hear you say that it's just going to be more time. How would you say, how big is that burden? Or how backed up are we? How many bad gun bills are out there in fight?
There's a lot. I think the NRA has at least 6 in front of the United States Supreme Court. That number may change after the Bruin decision. Cases were remanded back to the lower courts to use the Bruin analysis. Courts have taken upon themselves to interpret that as they will, not by the letter of the law or Bruin. So everything the clock kind of restarted. But the NRA has at least a couple of cases in front of them. The biggest ones being what we call hardware bans, which is the so-called assault weapons bans or semi-automatic firearms bans, and largely the 10-round magazine bans, as well as what some call sensitive places, we call gun-free zones. So those are kind of the big ones that are at the Supreme Court. The Ninth Circuit is very bottlenecked, and it's pretty much what we are being told is that all is hinging on California, and the California case, the Bonta case, which is the 10-round magazine ban. That has been there for years. I can't remember the year that passed in California. Long time, a decade. That's been sitting there. We've been waiting for the Ninth Circuit. We don't know why. We don't know the holdup. But we're being told that all the other cases the NRA has brought through Oregon or Washington are all hinging and waiting on the decision from the Ninth Circuit on Bonta. So timing, years, if not more.
Right now, the Second Amendment Foundation has more than 55 cases in progress. And as being said, we've got these cases that are, bottlenecked at the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit is one of the more liberal, if not the most liberal, appeals court circuit in the United States. And I have a theory based on experience, these guys do not want to hand down a ruling, especially after Bruin, because there's only one direction that ruling could go. And that's why these cases just gather dust. The courts, the circuit courts, are very powerful in this country. And if they want to sit on something, they'll just sit on it for a long time. And hopefully it'll go away. But that's really what's happening in a lot of these cases. We can't explain why these cases don't move, but they don't. They just sit there.
How can we make noise in that arena?
Well, you really can't lobby a federal court,
Right.
but you can make noise with Congress. And Congress, if they hear enough yelling, they're going to respond. It may take a while, it may take a lot of yelling, but there's also, see, I'm a working member of the press, which makes me pretty stupid, but I am a practicing journalist. I've been in this business for 54 years. And there are some good reporters out there who, when they see a story like this, they're going to tell the story because it's got some drama to it, and it's got the possibility of waking people up and getting people to pay attention. Right before I came down here, I was telling Peter later, right before I left to come down here, I did an interview with a reporter from the National Review about 1163. And he was really new to the subject, but when I started explaining to him what was going on here, he perked right up. And because it was one reporter talking to another, and I said, hey, this is BS. We're not talking about guns, we're talking about rights. And that was like the old Ford light bulb going off. So, if you make enough noise, something could get done maybe by reporters just asking the court, what the hell are you doing? Why are you sitting on this? Because that's not justice. Justice delayed is justice denied. You had a question earlier, too. Did you forget the question?
No.
Oh, okay.
Question?
This is to the field. Can you all hear me?
We can hear you.
I could stand up and yell.
That's fine.
There we go. Thank you. Maybe just a thought on what you said. I know Jane doesn't want us to tell a story, but if this involves our civil rights, why don't we have a right collectively to the right to a speedy trial when it involves our rights? Just like criminals in a criminal case have a right to a speedy trial, why don't we collectively as the people have the right? That seems like a good piece of legislation to push.
Well, you're not on trial for anything. Civil cases can take forever. Criminal cases, you have a right to the speedy trial. In a civil case, they just, blow it at your ear if they want to.
Criminalize our behavior.
Well, I know that, but until you're charged, and don't be a test case.
Yeah.
But until it remains in the civil courts. And I talked about the bucket of bucks idea earlier. Believe me, civil court cases cost fortunes. I can't imagine how much money the Second Amendment Foundation has spent in federal courts around the country. I do remember that when we took Chicago to court, I think the final bill on that was just shy of $500,000. And we've got a copy of a check that they had to write to us. They had to reimburse us for our expenses, and it's somewhere north of $400,000. So, there you go.
I guess my question would be, what are the, pardon? I'm sorry, because it's giving feedback. What are the chances of the president with the DOJ sending in a bulldog U.S. attorney to hit these Democrats on RICO and criminal charges and tie them up and punish them for violating our rights? What's the realistic chance of getting an aggressive U.S. attorney to get it out of the crooked Washington court system and into a federal court system where they have an
I am not
unlimited
at
budget?
liberty to discuss that.
Yeah, that's a.
Enough said, thank you.
There were a couple questions, couple issues in there from standing in the courts and what you can bring and what you can't. I will honorably say I was asked to politely leave or unpolitely leave the Democrat's office this year in Washington for suggesting that we studied different constitutions in law school. And when we were discussing gun bills. But legislators have something called qualified immunity when they enact laws that they believe is reasonable and within the Constitution. Again, those are all arguable facts. As we continue to argue and case precedent continues to be set, Bruin has been set as the standard. Lower courts are now interpreting that. We are seeing varying opinions depending on how liberal the circuit court may be. Again, the issue of bringing it for state versus federal court, what President Trump can, will, or is able to do, I cannot speak to that. But right now, what we do is we fight in Olympia, and we fight these two big bills until April 27th with everything that we have. Do you want
He doesn't have a roll call.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's got 2 appointments in Washington, one in Seattle and one in Spokane, Yakima, or Richland. I'm extremely hopeful that President Trump will be very mindful of the fights. That said, I mean, our current Attorney General in the state is doing a hell of a lot to draw attention to the state of Washington. And I'm constantly reminding myself when I look at some of the things that Attorney General Bondi has said she's going to do, and it's been 60 days or probably like 42, I'm guessing, since she's actually been confirmed. It's, you know, one thing is, while we may be suffocating, they're still suffocating from, you know, January 20th was less than 60 days ago. So I'm hopeful that Washington will percolate and rise to the important eye that President Trump will turn quickly. And so I'm extremely hopeful. He's got 2 years, and this is why I think you look at what he's doing is extremely aggressive with the executive orders and that sort of thing. You know, he's got 2 years of Congress and Senate. God willing, in 2 more years, we actually, you know, speaking as Pete Serrano, I'm not Silent Majority Foundation because, you know, we don't do politics. This C3, there's my disclaimer. Hopefully, we'll pick up some seats in the House and the Senate and give President Trump an extra 2 years, and then even better, whoever would come after him. So, yeah, I'm hopeful. But, you know, right now, just so you know, the Eastern District U.S. Attorney, there's an interim, as well as the Western District. The Eastern District resigned very quickly after President Trump was elected. The Western District was fired with the mass, I don't know, there was like 70-something U.S. attorneys that were appointed under the Biden administration that were all fired in the swoop of 10. So right now, they have interim appointees who I think can serve at somewhere in like 120 to 180 days, or 200 days, some weird congressional act. So we will see someone new within the next 6 months or so. I know you got a ton of questions. Do I have anything else? I will say this. I would like to get my 9-year-old home fast.
One thing for Adine, I see a lot of gray hair, a little bit more than what I've got. How difficult is it to go down to Olympia and testify, and what kind of a reaction do the senators and the legislators get?
How difficult is it? I guess it depends on where you come from. I fly in from Idaho. Disclaimer. I got out of California and I said I got to go down. Seattle or Portland wasn't going to be it for me. So, but I do come in. So I take quite a bit. How difficult is it? Not. All you need to do is show up to Olympia, get into that room, know what time, If the committee room does fill up, we've had 2 and 3 overflow rooms, and if you get the opportunity to testify, they'll call you up from that overflow room and put you in the testimony chair. As far as timing goes, Washington is a little bit different than many other states. For example, my counterpart in Colorado, they've been arguing over a similar assault weapons ban like we faced in Washington. Their hearing went from 9 a.m. till 10:30 p.m. and they cut off testimony. In Washington, the chair typically packs the agenda on gun bill days. It's very, very full. They'll typically only take 6 people. It's a panel of 3, 6 for and 6 against the bill. The NRA has worked with the chairs to identify people, to put people up that are going to bring respectful, differing arguments. We aren't all saying the same thing. If that's something you want to do, please let me know. There are bills, including 1163, where I took myself off of the panel to give somebody in Washington who wanted to testify the opportunity to testify. I will do that. What is the reaction? By this time, the legislature knows me, the committees know me. They know what I'm going to say, they know what the NRA is going to say. Some of them like it, some of them don't. I work behind the scenes to try to plant questions, to work with legislators who are friendly to our stuff. How they respond to you, or somebody who hasn't testified, or maybe is a new face. You start, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I live in this Washington district. It's going to be a little bit more focused than when I get up there. I'm used to them playing Candy Crush when I talk. But I know that the media is listening, and that's who we're trying to find, right? They know what the NRA is going to say, and it's not typically the Democrats don't agree with what I have to say. Again, maybe you've heard what has become, I think, a famous quote in Washington by our now state insurance commissioner. This was in response to me in a committee 2 years ago, where Patty Cooter said, "Constitutionality is in the eye of the beholder. I will see you in court." And I said, "Yes, you will." So they know what I'm going to say, but can we put you in that seat? They're going to respond a little bit differently if they don't know you and they don't know your face. How this impacts you as a Washington resident versus myself. Again, we're not just the NRA from Virginia. We have tens of thousands of members in Washington, and I get the privilege to represent them, and I'm very proud to do that. I come from a family of life members of the NRA. This is in my blood. My family's been doing it for a long time. My family was in politics, so this is all not new for me. We sat around the table when I was a little kid and filled out ballots from as early as I can remember. Typically when I walk in the room, no offense, I love all of you, but I dropped the age by like 20 years, right? We've got to find my generation. I have to find my generation, the younger generation, get them into these seats, to get them into committee rooms, to get them engaged off of just Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever the social media channel may be. So the response is going to be different for each person that gets up there. Again, I think I'm at 8 years of representing Washington, not all for the NRA, but they know what I'm going to say. So I'm okay when they are playing Candy Crush. But we have, right, the media there to cover what we're arguing, and we, again, have the Constitution to back us. And I will die on that hill.
One of the things I think people need to... One of the things I was trying to emphasize is the fact that many times these people like to see you down there face to face. It's more meaningful when they hear it coming from your mouths as opposed to coming from somebody else. And the reason I say that is because you're the voters, you're the ones that are making that difference. When I was sitting down there in that room, I was looking straight across the space at Michelle Caldier. She actually has an event tomorrow in Gig Harbor. I will be attending and reiterating many of the points that I made in front of her, and she was very receptive to a lot of the conversation. Many of these people don't deal in firearms, don't know anything about it, but they're hungry for the information. And as long as you can talk with a level head and be convincing, that's the meaningful part of it. The other aspect of it too is like what she's pointing out, bring your kids and your grandkids, get them involved, because they're the next generation of voters if they're not already doing so. And they need to learn that this is their heritage, it's their future that's involved, and it's your responsibility to make sure that they're aware of that kind of thing. Another aspect of it is also looking at what's going on with your family. For example, is anybody familiar with an organization called SEIU, the Service Employees International Union? Okay, they employ many, many people in the caregiving field, in a lot of the nursing homes and centers of that nature. When they have control of the care of a lot of our senior family members, they rely on those people's information to influence them. And if you want to talk about ballot harvesting, that's a primary bid source for that kind of activity. So be aware of what's going on around you, because these are the things that are happening, and this is where we're getting beat up, because we've got people out there that are working harder trying to get the message out than we are in some cases.
Thank you, Marty. I did want to say that we have 2 bills, and if you guys can all write a 1.5 minute speech, have it prepared. When I go down and testify, I will speak, but I also have it written in a written form that I don't really read. But that way I can hand in one copy for things I wasn't able to cover in the 1.5 minutes. They used to give us 3 minutes, and they lowered it down to 1.5 minutes. So if you have it written, it can be made part of the minutes for that hearing and go on a record. So Brian Keelan and Bea and I show up down in Olympia at 5 in the morning, sometimes in the dark and the rain, just to get in line before the anti-gun people bus the people in. So they're bussed in, they're paid, they give them food, and they write all their speeches for them. And on our side, we put our own personality into our speeches. But if you need help, reach out to me or Evine, and we'll be glad to do that for you. I think we have time for one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up. And then, Bea, would you raise your hand?
Right here.
So Bea's going to need help. We have to put the room back the way we found it when we came in here, and she's the one who will give you instruction afterwards if you can stay and help. So one more question.
Nadine, what's this about the registration? I believe it's illegal or whatever it was.
Under House Bill 1163 that I started to touch on, yes. So federally, it is illegal to have a gun registry. You cannot collect gun owners, their personal information. House Bill 1163, which again now is in the Senate, in order to get the permit, you have to submit a whole host of information. Your own personal, sensitive data, your name, any other names you've gone by, your address, your phone number, your fingerprints, a photo, and you also have to waive medical review so that they can determine if you are mental or mentally adjudicated. You have to waive your rights to your court and your medical access documents to get this permit. That information is stored with the Washington State Police. That is a government organization. That is a government agency who is creating a registry of who is buying guns because you need the permit to get the gun. Right? So that's a registry, how that's done. Again, a lot of issues coming out lately. Anybody gotten a piece of mail or an email that your data was leaked? Yeah. The NRA just sued in California because all of the concealed license holders' data was leaked. I'm not safe with that being in Washington State Police control, but it's not just going to be concealed anymore. This is every single person who wants to not only buy, but transfer a firearm.
Thank you. I wanted to say that, just a heads up, that the ATF is in Pierce County auditing a gun shop right now and an indoor gun range. So I don't know what the timing is for that, but be prepared if you are a member of a gun club or store or whatever, that the ATF is actually going in and auditing the records of these shops. And it's happening right now as we speak. So I wanted to thank all of you for coming. If you do have a question that wasn't answered or somebody on Facebook, you can email me. I'll get it to one of these three if that's who you have a question for. I want to thank you so much for coming. I can't do this all alone. None of us can do these things all alone. And I really appreciate your participation. So thank you. Have a wonderful evening and be prepared. We'll let you know as soon as we get information about when the next hearings are. So have a good evening and thank you so much for coming.